So let's have a look at case study 2, which is on phishing. Fraudsters are using phishing emails to steal usernames and passwords, allowing them to hack into your personal or business email accounts. They then troll and monitor your email account for an opportunity to intercept an invoice. For example, when you're purchasing goods and waiting for an invoice on email, or if your business is sending an invoice by email. The scammers intercept an email, change the bank details on the invoice, and send it on for payment. In many cases, they use spoofing to make the email address seem credible and trustworthy. Spoofing changes the letter or domain in the email address to make it appear legitimate. The recipient pays the invoice thinking it's come from a legitimate source, when in fact the money is paid into the scammer's account. Tower recently received a phishing email which looked very genuine and almost cost the business £84,000. So what were the red flags in our phishing email experience? Well, first of all, the email address had been changed from @towerleasing.co.uk to towerleasing.co.uk. The I in leasing was changed to a lowercase l. So having it pointed out in front of you, it's quite easy to see the difference. But when you've got a whole series of emails you're working through, you may not necessarily check the full spelling of the email that's come through. Secondly, in our case, the bank details in the invoice have been completely changed. So the fraudster had added in their own bank details. The font of the signature on the email had also been changed and didn't match the rest of the text. So in our case, an email about a legitimate settlement Tower was making for 2 deals with Xerox was intercepted by a fraudster. Originally, Tower's legal team had sent Tower's MD a settlement invoice, which the MD forwarded on to the finance team for payment. A couple of days later, the finance team received another email from a fraudster pretending to be Tower's MD, requesting payment to Metro Bank. Then finance received a further chaser email from the fraudster, again chasing payment to Metro Bank. After checking Tower's payment history, the finance team realised that the original invoice had already been paid, and this prompted a call through to the legal team. It quickly transpired that it was a fraudulent email and invoice. So the fraudster in this case had intercepted a legitimate email chain. So they'd intercepted the email from the legal team to Tower, had been monitoring the emails for quite a long time until an invoice became apparent, at which point they downloaded the invoice, changed the banking details, and then sent it back to Tower, pretending to be Tower's MD. So luckily in this case, the fraudster was discovered prior to the payment being made, and Tower was not out of pocket. So now let's have a look at a following email address which has been provided by Sussex Crime Watch. Can you spot the difference? So in this case, the first one in each example is the correct email, and then the second one is from hackers. So the A in the latter is a different alphabet. So an average internet user would easily fall for this. Would you have noticed? Seeing them together, it's easier to see, but in isolation, if you just received the second email, would you have noticed the difference of the A? So now we're going to move on to what red flags we can look out for to help prevent fraud and have a look at some good practices. So we're going to concentrate on know your customer. So firstly, consider how the customer communicates with you. Are they only insisting on email rather than telephone? Have they asked for no postal correspondence? Are they insisting on a specific email address which they've provided? And likewise, are they insisting on a specific telephone number, which they've also provided? These should all raise red flags. So we've had a real life example where the verification calls with the customer checked multiple times that we would only email and not post any documents. They were quite insistent about no post being sent out. And in this instance, the insurance quote that is sent via post to the registered address triggered the real customer to contact Tower and report the suspected fraud. So it's really important for a best practice to check the telephone number provided by the customer. Is it a number that's publicly associated to the business? For example, on their website, or if you conduct a Google search, does the telephone number match? Secondly, check the email address provided by the customer. Emails ending with .online, .cloud, .shop, or a personal Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, etc. should raise the need for an additional check. Does the email match with the web address or the emails listed on the website? For example, we would expect an email address signing for Tower Leasing to have a domain of @towerleasing.co.uk. We would check that there are no slight variations. So for example, towerleasing.com, which doesn't match our website, tower-leasing.co.uk, or @tower.co.uk. You can check email addresses for different customers with the same supplier on whois. Have they been created by the same host? So here, whois is a great tool that we use at Tower Leasing to go in and check email addresses and web addresses. So all you need to do is type in the email address or web address, and then it does its search and it will tell you when the email address or the website was created, how long it's been running for, etc. So like my original example earlier, where a business had been training for 50, 60 years, you wouldn't expect them to all of a sudden have a brand new website. You would have expected the website to have been created and the email addresses quite a number of years ago. So that's a red flag to look out for. Also consider recent directorships for the customer. So red flags here would be recent changes to the directors or the director's profile looking unusual. Are there recently appointed directors? So if you can see director have been appointed, then dismissed, then appointed, dismissed, that should raise some red flags. Do they have other businesses listed that they're directors of? And are these businesses still active? And also the equipment. So red flags if the equipment specification doesn't match the customer profile, or the volume of the equipment doesn't match the size of the customer business. So best practice here would be to check the kit type and amount suitable for the customer's business. So check the number of employees versus the equipment counts, the number of headsets required versus employees, the number of copiers versus the size of the building and the size of the business. Make sure that the equipment is relevant. So fryers are going into a catering business and not an office, etc. And the type of kit to be more wary of, obviously iPhones and iPads, because they can be moved about quite a bit, and copiers that look too highly priced. Installation addresses, so red flags would be the customer's address not matching across all the documents and the installation address not being linked to the business. So we've had a recent example where we couldn't link the installation address. When we've conducted Google Images, it returned a residential address. The docs did not all match, and the office was a shared office space, but it was a large number of handsets leased. So it didn't match because the business was a residential address, and the other office that we were provided the address for was very, very small, whereas the customer had asked for a very large number of headsets, which didn't quite add up. So best practices here would be to use Google Earth to view a picture of the delivery or the install location. Does the address match with the registered address or the trading address? Does the business look as expected based on the equipment being leased? Does the location look like a residential address? If it looks like an accountant's address, we need to check that the correct delivery location is on the supplier's invoice, the certificate of delivery, and the lease agreement. So we can check Companies House for any other businesses registered at the same address. So are there multiple directors there? Are they the same? And have the businesses been dissolved or why? So they're all good practices to look out for.